ecosystem, and it gives me pleasure to welcome our moderator for this session, Bruce Biegel. Hey, Bruce, over to you. Awesome.
Thank you. Before I introduce the panel, I just wanted to run through a few slides from our new research that is coming out on the outlook for identity in advanced TV, challenges and opportunities. It's work that we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months with participation from about 120 survey respondents and 4 or 5, 30, sorry, speaker interviews. Next slide, please. So skipping through here, this is really the 4th in a series of papers that we've done over the last 3 years. Next, please. And we started with identity. We looked at data collaboration solutions. We looked at contextual. And what we started to see was that the way that advanced TV, addressable linear, connected TV, streaming was evolving was different from an identity standpoint. And there were 3 main use cases that people are focused on. One is media planning, and media planning coming from different parts of the organization. But basically the goal there, define and segment, look for the addressable audience, do the matching, but really focus on the household version of identity and linking people back to that household to match to the content. And so the kind of the first use case for identity fell into that sector. The second was activating. How do I activate these audiences across multiple buying paths? And then the third was, how do I consistently measure when I don't have a unified currency, when I don't have unified buying paths, and I have multiple ways that I buy? Next, please. What we found was there was a disconnect at the linear TV planner, the digital media buyer, the agencies that support each of those groups. They were defining audience differently, yet you're trying to find that common audience. The second challenge was the 5 paths to buy media on TV sets in the household. It's not as straightforward as, say, doing personalization on your own site or programmatic media buying with exchanges. It's a very different way to buy. The fact that there is no unified interoperable identity solution, as cookies have been deprecated, as IP addresses are being permission restricted or obfuscated, that has created a challenge. That and no one we spoke to said, yeah, we should have just one solution. And then finally, a lack of unified measurement across all of the different buying channels. I'm going to dig in a little bit to the 5 paths. Next slide, please. So what we found is, as we went deeper, is, okay, I can buy through a streaming app on that TV set. I could buy through being connected to broadband through my ISP into the house. So I could buy on a Pluto or a Hulu or a YouTube or Fubo or Tubi. I could go directly to the set-top box provider. I can buy from a Verizon Fios, from a Comcast, from a DirecTV. So again, multiple options depending on where I am. And I can also buy if I've got a Roku or I've got an Amazon or Apple streaming device, or even the gaming console. And then what we've seen in the last few years is the TV set manufacturers, especially those with smart TVs, you can now buy through their media buying function and the data that they're collecting. Each of these brings you to a different part of the screen. So as a media planner, I'm looking at this going, okay, which way do I go to get that user in the household? Next, please. Well, we asked our survey audience of agencies and brands, and they came back and said, you know what, multipath buying is fine. We're going to test extensively. Many of them, are moving from 1 or 2 approaches to going to all of the above. We think over the next 36 months, this kind of settles down a little bit, but people are generally going to use all of the different buying paths to the screen. Next, please. And among the solutions that people are using to match the identity, to activate, et cetera, has been collaborative data solutions, sometimes clean rooms, sometimes bunkers. Does the data move? Does the data not move? But one of the things, even at this early stage of market evolution, the most people are using 3 or more clean rooms. And some people aren't sure, but we're seeing this adoption. And what we believe is going to happen is we are going to see multiple clean rooms in use. Next, please. So ultimately, over the next 36 months, we expect a couple things to happen. We're going to see more interoperability between the identity solutions, more crosswalks, more referential data sets. No single identity system, not in Europe or the United States, is going to actually take over. And nobody wants it. Nobody wants to give up that level of control. We're going to see a rebalancing of control between buyers and sellers. The media owners, having maybe given up too much control in the wave of digital advertising, are saying, you know what, this is our audience. We want to make sure that we can put that audience across all of the different markets, and we'll control the data. So a little bit less of DSP control, though we believe programmatic is still going to be the way that things get bought eventually. We're going to see standardization of media solutions supported by multiple currencies. Again, it won't be just one currency. And we are seeing the iSpots, the Nielsen's, the video amps, really looking at how do I do that cross-stream measurement. So we're going to see that continue to evolve. And then finally, data collaboration solutions, the clean rooms, the bunkers, et cetera. We believe they will have to become interoperable, but we also believe they're going to be common. So as CDPs for first-party data management have expanded exponentially over the last 3 years, we think for every CDP, there'll be a clean room, or it will be part of, depending on the use case. So a market that's going to continue to evolve pretty heavily, but identity adoption will continue at the fast pace that it's been. Next slide. And so finally, we decided, okay, let's take a look at what does this mean in terms of spend. For the US market, we think last year ended at around $2.25 billion. We expect that to go to $5.5 billion over the next 4 years, growing at about 17%. The UK growth rate is a little bit slower, but also tracking in the same direction. And we think of identity, it's the first-party identity management platforms, it's second-party data collaboration, it's third-party identity graph data, and it's the identity resolution process. These are the components that make this up. What I'd like to do now is bring on my panelists so that we can have a bit of a conversation about this. And if you could each introduce yourselves, and then I'm going to ask you a handful of questions, and we will continue this dialogue later this afternoon in the garden. There we go. All right. I'm going to start the first one with Michael. And Michael, if you could introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
So Michael Schoen, I lead marketing solutions at Neustar, which is now a Transunion company.
Okay. First question for you. Common audience definition. How are you seeing planning and buying evolving?
So I think you laid out the challenge pretty well in the review. There's a significant disconnect between historical linear TV buying and digital advanced TV buying. And it's really important that between the parties, there's a common understanding of who the consumer is that you're trying to reach. From my perspective, I think that's both a challenge for identity in order to be able to understand the consumers who are going to be exposed in each of those channels and tie them to a common understanding of the consumer, and then bring in third-party data sets. You can actually go through an audience segmentation process that is consistent, because you need to ensure that you're defining your audiences consistently so you can reach them effectively. I think when you laid out the challenge from a buying platform perspective, one of the big issues is that consumers are not just in one place, right? Consumers are going to be exposed through multiple channels. And if you don't do a good, consistent job defining your audience is in a common language, you're going to end up with a very disconnected media campaign across channels.
Got it. I'm going to move on a little bit. I spoke about the interoperability of identity and the challenges there. And I'd like to ask Tal to kind of expand on that and what he's seeing as both an activation and a measurement player in the market.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I love this odd setup, but it's pretty cool. Traveling abroad for a Zoom session is pretty cool. So first of all, I introduce myself. I'm Tal Chalozin. I'm CTO and co-founder of Innovid. We're a big player in the ad serving space, and recently we made an acquisition of TV Squared to round up measurement for linear and connected television. To your question about interoperability and challenges in that market. So clearly, I would say one of the key elements that we see is as the exposure data, or where we serve ads into so many different platforms, and each one has a different identifier and different ways in order to key off of data segments. Interoperability of both the exposure data, first-party data, targeting data, and attribution data is an extremely complicated task that we're trying to accommodate. Totally agree with Bruce, your comment at the top that there won't be a single identifier to rule them all. It seems like this is such a key asset that no one would give away. And the way that the market is panning out is that there will be multiple identifier, which require, as he said, different crosswalk, part of our offering. And this is what we decided, that no one needs yet another identifier. So we did not came up with our own identifier solution, but we are investing a lot in the crosswalk side, launched a product called Innovid Key to match with a lot of partners, many people here, and many others, in order to create this interoperability. I think that we're in the very early beginning of that. We as an industry, I mean, but that's the only way forward is the collaboration between everyone.
Great. I want to move on to the next topic and address this one to Devon. Clean rooms. Clean rooms are expanding. The number of clean rooms, the different use cases. Devon, would you speak to how you see this evolving over the next couple of years?
Sure. Thanks, Bruce. And thanks for my fellow panelists. Happy to be here. So my name is Devon DeBlasio. I lead product marketing at InfoSum. We are a data collaboration platform in clean room. It's a great question. We've had a lot of discussion throughout this event about the future state of clean rooms, where we are today. And where we are today, I think, is still very unknown, because the use cases at scale are not being essentially performed across an organization like they would in a DMP or a CDP or some other three-letter acronym. And so when we look at the future state of privacy and secure data collaboration, where you're working with 2, 3, 4, 5 partners at once to execute a campaign, that's really where we need to start thinking about where the future state of clean rooms, the definition of clean rooms is going to be defined. And so today we have a multitude of different styles of clean rooms. You have the clean room that is attached to a walled garden. You have a clean room that is potentially, white labeled through an agency. You have a clean room that a brand wants to use to centralize their first party data. And then we have really the pure play decentralized clean rooms that really sit in the between all of these industries, all those data sets, to actually facilitate actual collaboration, right? Strategic planning, strategic measurement without the data ever moving. And so when we think about, the landscape, I think there's going to be a definition that has to be defined in market by the key players, the third party, analyst organizations. And then there has to be a focus on the PETs, right? The privacy enhancing technology, the underlying framework that is applied to a clean room. And that is where I think the scrutiny of how advanced, how scalable that technology is in protecting data, but also allowing marketers to just do their jobs without having to worry about the security of their data, but also the security of their partners' data. That's where I think we're going to start to see the clean room market really define itself. And so when we look at the underlying use cases, you want to use your data the most effective way, efficient way as possible without risking privacy of your customers, privacy of your business. But you also want to engage with multitude of partners. That's where I think, data collaboration platforms that can handle secure multi-party compute at scale, that can link together identity partners as needed, right? We have one identity partner that maybe have a better match rate with publisher X, another identity partner that may have a better match rate with publisher Y, then figuring out how to stitch together identity partners to deliver the best incremental match for a multitude of partners. That's an area we're exploring within the InfoSum platform as well. So it's still early to tell in terms of the clean room market, where we need to go, where we need to be, and what was going to essentially be the defining characteristic. But we're optimistic, and I think the industry just needs to focus on privacy and focus on scalability and ease of use, and that's hopefully will drive where we are headed within the clean room market itself.
Yeah, we think that we've seen earlier adoption, frankly, in the EU market and in the UK. And this is one of those, because GDPR came first, we're seeing it roll into the US market. Then again, we've seen clean rooms with linear TV in use for the last 10 years. So it's not a new concept. It just has picked up so much steam with regulation and privacy. For the last question, I'd like to address this to all of you, and I will start with Michael. Let's talk about how measurement is going to evolve. What do you see coming?
Yeah, so I think it's important to break down the question of measurement in terms of whether you're talking about currency or focused on measuring the outcome from your marketing investment. And I think they're both important challenges. From a Neustar perspective, we've been focused on the latter question, which is how can you be sure that your marketing investment across all channels is actually driving the right business outcomes? And that requires identity, it requires data collaboration, because you need to ensure that you understand the audiences that are exposed across all of these channels, inclusive of non-TV or video channels as well. So we're working with clients to help ensure that they understand how consumers may be exposed, not just through the 5 TV channels that you laid out, Bruce, but also through traditional print and through other digital channels and social channels and so on. And that's where clean rooms also play a significant role, because increasingly getting access to that sort of exposure data requires the sorts of clean rooms and data partnerships that provide access through privacy enhancing technologies to get access to that privileged data, and then combine it with the outcome data as well. Obviously, many of our clients have their own access to business outcomes when they're in position when they're selling directly to consumers. But we're also supporting many clients in industries such as CPG, where the advertising brand does not actually have direct access to consumer information about business outcomes. And so even understanding the end result of a marketing campaign is going to require clean room partnerships in order to be able to execute.
Got it. Tal, you made an investment, as you mentioned, in TV Squared. We'd love to get your opinion on how this is coming together.
Sure. So the first area that we invest a lot, going back to the interoperability, is taking exposure data, both from linear, coming mostly from ACR data, and across all the digital channels. So working with Clean Room, working with walled gardens like YouTube or others, and open web, and just creating some type of a spine so you can know the different places that you delivered all anchor on some type of a unified identifier. And as I mentioned, we use Innovid key in order for that unified identifier. And then what we're trying to help our customers solve are 2 questions. One is how many households did I reach, and what's the overlap between them, or the duplication between them, which is one of the biggest questions that we're getting in the kind of streaming plus linear world, is the understanding the duplication. And the second, as Michael said, TV Square has a massive investment in the outcome space, mostly digital outcomes. So once we have the exposure data, tying it into website traffic, app downloads, search lift, or other type of digital outcomes.
Got it. And Devon?
So obviously from a measurement standpoint, no worries. From a measurement standpoint, we're focused on how to deliver the most simplest calculations with the most advanced amount of privacy, right? So many measurement requires, or most measurement requires, the exposure, or the transfer, or the sharing of very sensitive data, transaction data, exposure level data. information that if it was leaked, obviously would be a huge issue for that organization and all the organizations involved in that calculation. And so we're working, as a slow start to really figure out the basics, right? How can we do incrementality, reach, frequency, and do that in a way that doesn't require the sharing, the movement of that sensitive data. And then the goal there is to give publishers really a tool in their toolbox. We've done this with Channel 4 with ITV, where they actually are able to build their own incrementality studies and their own processes that allow their advertisers to feel comfortable, essentially using their customer exposure and transaction data to perform those engagements at scale.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the panelists for joining today. I think we are going to cut away now and really appreciate the conversation and look forward to continuing this later this afternoon.